The Tarnished Cat, a definitive autopsy of the Jaguar S-Type's failures. Introduction. A legacy of flawed grace. The Jaguar S-Type possesses an undeniable magnetism. Its retro-futurist design, launched in 1999, masterfully evokes the sensuous curves of the iconic 1960s Jaguar Mark II, promising heritage, luxury, and British charm. On the used market, it presents as the archetypal, bargain luxury trap, a car that offers the image and opulence of a high-end executive saloon for the price of a mundane family hatchback. Yet, this seductive allure masks a grim reality. The S-Type's reputation for crippling unreliability is not merely anecdotal, it is a well-documented legacy of flawed engineering, poor material choices, and cost-cutting that tarnished a legendary brand. Born during Ford's ownership of Jaguar, the S-Type was built upon the DEW98 platform, a chassis shared with the American market Lincoln LS and Ford Thunderbird. This parentage is critical context, as it explains the presence of Ford parts bin components that not only clashed with the Jaguar ethos but were often the source of the car's most catastrophic failures. Its primary mission was to challenge the dominant German executive saloons, particularly the E39 generation BMW 5 Series, a vehicle widely considered the dynamic and quality benchmark of its era. In this, the S-Type failed spectacularly at launch. As one period review bluntly stated, the E39 slapped it down hard. However, to understand the S-Type is to understand that it is not one car, but two distinct and vastly different machines. A major facelift and engineering overhaul for the 2003 model year created a stark dividing line. The pre-facelift models, 1999 to 2002, are fundamentally more problematic than the heavily re-engineered post-facelift, 2003 to 2007, versions. This distinction is the single most important factor in any analysis of its myriad failures. The catastrophic failures, the four horsemen of the S-Type apocalypse. While many cars suffer from minor issues, the S-Type, particularly in its early form, is defined by a quartet of severe, common, and ruinously expensive systemic failures. These are not mere annoyances. They are vehicle-ending design flaws that transform the dream of affordable luxury into a financial nightmare. The ticking time bomb, V8 timing chain tension as the single greatest indictment of the early S-Type's engineering lies deep within its 4-liter AJ-V8 engine. The critical design flaw was the use of secondary timing chain tensioners with bodies made of plastic. This material choice was catastrophically unsuited for the high heat, high-stress environment of an engine's valve train. Over time and with repeated heat cycles, this plastic becomes brittle, leading to cracks and eventual disintegration. The mechanism of failure is swift and brutal. When the tensioner's plastic housing shatters, the timing chain instantly loses tension. This slack allows the chain to jump one or more teeth on the camshaft sprockets. This is not a limp home scenario. A jumped chain throws the engine's delicate valve timing into chaos. If it jumps by a sufficient margin, the rising pistons will collide with the still open valves, resulting in immediate and catastrophic engine failure. The only warning is often a brief rattling sound on a cold start, a noise easily dismissed by an unsuspecting owner. The financial consequences are staggering. Owner accounts cite repair bills of £8,500 for new tensioners and guides, and another reports a cost of over £3,000 to repair a destroyed intake manifold after the tensioners failed and the car died in traffic. This single, predictable failure can easily cost more than the purchase price of the entire vehicle. Jaguar's implicit admission of guilt is clear. The part was redesigned multiple times, and a technical service bulletin, TSB 303-30, was issued to address a rattling noise caused by tensioners. This issue represents a fundamental failure in material science and risk assessment, likely driven by cost saving, and it renders any pre-2003 Volts 8 model without documented proof of updated metal-bodied tensioners an unacceptable financial risk. The infamous gearbox, our tale of two transmissions transmission failure is the single most reported problem for the S-Type, with hundreds of owner complaints chronicling a litany of faults. This reputation is almost entirely earned by the gearbox fitted to pre-2003 models, the Ford 5R55N 5-speed automatic, a unit described by owners as absolute rubbish. The 5R55N is plagued by specific, well-documented failure modes. The most common is the premature wear of the servo piston bores within the transmission. This defect manifests as a reluctant, harsh, or lurching shift, particularly between first and second gear and fourth and fifth gear. Other common faults include failure of the pressure control solenoid, leading to gearbox fault, warning on the dash, and issues with the torque converter. The problem is so endemic that aftermarket companies develop specific kits to repair the Ford servo bore issue. This saga perfectly encapsulates the S-Type's two-car identity. For the 2003 facelift, Jaguar made the pivotal and expensive decision to switch to the German-made ZF6 HP 26 6-speed automatic. This transmission, also used by contemporaries from BMW and Audi, is regarded as bulletproof and an excellent gearbox, representing a massive leap forward in both performance and reliability. The switch was a clear admission that the Ford-sourced unit was not fit for purpose in a premium saloon. Even with the superior ZF unit, danger lurks in the marketing claim that it was sealed for life. This is a dangerous misnomer. The transmission fluid still degrades, and owners who neglect to perform fluid and filter changes, a job that can cost several £100s, risk premature failure even in this much improved gearbox. The hidden rot, endemic sill and subframe corrosion. Perhaps the most treacherous of the S-Type's flaws is corrosion, because it is deliberately hidden by the car's own design. The full-length plastic sill covers, while providing a clean aesthetic, act as a perfect trap for moisture, road salt, and debris. This trapped moisture facilitates severe corrosion of the car's structural sills, which rust from the inside out. The issue is described by owners as a major adversary. This insidious process means a car can appear cosmetically pristine on the outside while its structural integrity is dangerously compromised underneath the plastic covers. A proper inspection is not optional, but it is also not easy, requiring the difficult removal of the sill covers to see the true state of the metal beneath. Forum users warn that by the time rust bubbles are visible on the painted exterior, the internal damage is already extensive and expensive to repair. Other corrosion hotspots include the rear subframe and its mounting points, the area under the rear windscreen seal, and points where bumpers rub against the bodywork. The S-Type's design actively conceals its most significant structural flaw, making it a far riskier purchase than a car with honest, visible rust. The persistent thirst. Chronic cooling system leaks. The S-Type's cooling system is a fragile and interconnected network of failure points, composed largely of plastic components that are ill-suited to long-term exposure to heat and pressure. Persistent coolant loss is one of the most common complaints. The list of frequent failure points is long. The coolant expansion tank is prone to developing small leaks and cracks. The plastic end tanks of the radiator become brittle and fail. The water pump is a common replacement item, and a multitude of plastic coolant hoses are known to fail with age. On the high-performance R model, a coolant pipe running under the supercharger is another notorious weak point that can fail and dump the system's contents. This fragility is made exponentially more dangerous by a deliberately misleading temperature gauge. It is a dummy gauge, meaning it is programmed to show a normal reading across a wide range of temperatures. It will often only move into the red once the engine is already dangerously overheating, at which point severe damage like a warped cylinder head or blown head gasket is likely already occurring. This design philosophy prioritizes calming an uninformed driver over providing accurate, crucial information. The combination of a system built from fragile components and a gauge that hides the evidence of their failure creates a perfect storm for engine destruction. Death by 1,000 cuts, the plague of electrical gremlins beyond the catastrophic mechanical failures. The S-Type ownership experience is often defined by a deeply frustrating and persistent plague of electrical issues. These problems make daily ownership an exercise in anxiety and can be maddeningly difficult and expensive to diagnose. The phantom drain, the unsolvable dead battery. A pervasive complaint among S-Type owners is the phantom battery drain. A car can be running perfectly one day and be completely dead the next, even when fitted with a new, correct specification battery. The root cause is that the car's complex electrical systems fail to properly go to sleep after the ignition is turned off, allowing a module or relay to remain active and drain the battery overnight. Diagnosing the source is a nightmare. Owners and mechanics have chased a multitude of culprits, including a faulty door module that prevents the car from powering down, a worn microswitch in the ignition barrel that fails to cut accessory power, sticking relays in the boot, trunk, a faulty rear electronic control module, and damaged wiring in the boot lid harness. The problem was so widespread on early models that Jaguar issued a technical service bulletin, TSB S41402, that identified a high-resistance wire to the primary junction box as a cause, requiring a new jumper harness to be fitted. The unreliability of the car's most basic function, starting, fundamentally undermines any pretense of luxury. A symphony of malfunctions. When onboard systems go rogue, the parasitic drain is just one of many electrical maladies. The sheer breadth of ancillary system failures points to a systemic lack of quality in components and software integration. Window regulators. Failure of the front and rear window regulators is one of the most common non-engine complaints, leaving windows stuck open or closed. Electronic parking brake, EPB. On post-facelift models, the EPB is a source of dread. Described as a nightmare, it is known to fail, either sticking on and immobilizing the car or simply throwing a fault on the dashboard. Climate control. This is another major source of complaints, with dedicated forum threads attracting hundreds of comments. Failures range from the heater blowing cold air despite the replacement of valves and thermostats to AC compressor failure or the system simply refusing to blow cold air. The check engine light, cell. For many owners, the cell is a near-permanent fixture on the dashboard. The causes are legion and include very common ignition coil failures that lead to misfires, failing catalytic converters, and a host of other sensor failures. Other gremlins. The list continues with malfunctioning electric driver's seat switches, faulty central locking and alarm systems, and broken plastic components in the HID headlights. This pattern of widespread, unrelated electrical faults creates a death by 1,000 cuts ownership experience, where the car is perpetually in a state of partial failure. The cabin experience. From parts bin austerity to flawed luxury for a luxury vehicle, the interior is a critical part of the ownership experience. Here too, the S-Type fell short, with its cabin story being one of initial failure followed by a partial recovery that could never fix the platform's inherent flaws. The pre-facelift penance, 1999 to 2002, a Jaguar in name only. The interior of the pre-2002 S-Type was a strategic disaster. It was launched to compete with the E39 BMW 5 Series, a car lauded for its high-quality, driver-focused cockpit. The S-Type's cabin, by contrast, was dominated by a U-shaped center console made of cheap-feeling plastic, a clear Ford parts bin carryover that was completely out of place in a Jaguar. Forum users have damningly described it as the urinal-style dashboard. This disappointing interior immediately made the car feel like a cut-price, inferior product and was a massive miscalculation by the brand. Jaguar's own verdict was clear. The entire interior design was junked in 2002, a tacit admission that the original was a profound failure. A welcome, if imperfect, update, 2003 to 2007, better, but still flawed. The facelifted interior was a big improvement. The design was more traditional and luxurious, featuring better quality materials, real wood trim, and an optional touchscreen infotainment system that was a notable step up. However, while the facelift fixed the aesthetic and quality issues, it could not fix the fundamental packaging problems of the DEW98 platform. Despite its large exterior dimensions, the S-Type's cabin is notoriously inefficient in its use of space. It is frequently described as cramped and very narrow, particularly in the footwells. Rear legroom is limited for an executive car, and the large central transmission tunnel makes seating 3 passengers in the back an uncomfortable proposition. One owner aptly summarized the issue, noting the car has 3 series space for 5 series dimensions. This poor packaging extends to practicality, with a shallow boot that limits its utility for carrying luggage or large items. Even in its best form, the S-Type is a compromised vehicle, often replacing the entire 400-pound unit, are the lifeline for keeping these cars on the road. Furthermore, as the cars age, parts availability is becoming an emerging problem. Sourcing specific components can be difficult and lead to long vehicle downtimes, a critical risk for anyone planning to use the car as a daily driver. The S-Type is a classic value trap. It is not a cheap luxury car, but rather an expensive liability with a low entry fee. Benchmarking failure. The S-Type versus the Germans. When launched, the S-Type was positioned against the best from Germany, and the comparison was not favorable. While rivals like the BMW E39 and Mercedes W211 had their own well-known issues, E39 cooling systems and suspension wear, W211 electronics and air suspension, the pre-facelift S-Type was uniquely plagued by multiple, systemic, catastrophic design flaws in its core drivetrain. In post-facelift form, the car became more competitive. The ride quality was often praised as being more supple and comfortable than the firmer E39, and the high-performance S-Type R was a competent handler with respectable performance figures. However, it was consistently let down by its traditional J gate shifter, which was slow and outdated compared to the transmissions in its rivals. Ultimately, while a late model S-Type developed a unique character, the model line as a whole was comprehensively outclassed in reliability, interior quality, and engineering integrity by its German contemporaries. It never truly recovered from its disastrous launch. Conclusion: a beautiful, broken bargain best avoided. The Jaguar S-Type's reputation as bad car is overwhelmingly justified, particularly for the 1999 to 2002 models. The litany of systemic flaws, the four horsemen of catastrophic timing chain failure, unreliable Ford-sourced transmissions, hidden structural rust, and a fragile cooling system made worse by a deceptive gauge, renders these early cars a profoundly risky proposition. The post-2003 facelifted models are significantly better, having addressed the worst of the engine and transmission issues. However, they are by no means good, in an absolute sense. They are merely less bad. They remain susceptible to the insidious sill rust, the fragile cooling system, a plague of frustrating electrical gremlins, and the consequences of the platform's inefficient packaging. Even the best S-Type is a high-risk, high-maintenance vehicle suitable only for a dedicated, mechanically savvy enthusiast with a substantial repair fund and a trusted independent specialist on call. For the average car buyer seeking affordable, reliable luxury, the Jaguar S-Type represents a siren call leading directly to a reef of financial and emotional distress. It is the textbook definition of